Sarah, I need to confess something. I've been reading the Vimalakirti Sutra for 3 weeks now, and I still don't understand why a wealthy businessman lying in bed should matter to me in 2025.
Good. That confusion is the doorway. Tell me, what's bothering you about it?
Everything. He's rich, he's politically connected, he hangs out in casinos. The text even says he visits brothels, and yet somehow he's supposed to be more enlightened than the Buddha's own disciples? It reads like a fantasy, like someone wrote a fanfic where the cool kid is also the most spiritual.
And you think the monks are the real deal?
Well, yeah, they gave up everything. They meditate in caves, they follow the rules. That's what serious practice looks like, right?
That's what we've been told serious practice looks like. But by the end of this series, I'm going to show you why the Buddha's top 10 disciples, the Avengers of ancient India, refused to visit Vimalakirti when he got sick. They were terrified of him, and we're going to find out why.
You're saying the monks were scared of a sick man in bed?
Not just scared, humiliated. Every single one of them had a story. Last time I met that guy, he destroyed my understanding of the Dharma in under 2 minutes. So when the Buddha says, go check on Vimalakirti, they all find excuses. It's actually hilarious.
Okay, now I'm interested, but I need context first. Why are we doing this? Why this text?
Because this text is the blueprint for people like us. Welcome to the Householder's Sutra. I'm Sarah, a lineage holder in the Yutak Nyingtig tradition of Tibetan medicine and Vajrayana Buddhism.
And I'm Alex, a practitioner, a student, and someone trying to figure out how ancient wisdom fits into a life that includes emails, mortgages, and arguments about whose turn it is to take out the trash.
Over the next 10 episodes, we're going to walk through the Vimalakirti Sutra, one of the most subversive, brilliant, and surprisingly funny texts in all of Buddhism. We're using Robert Thurman's translation, which is still the definitive English version 50 years after he published it.
Okay, so before we go further, who is Robert Thurman and why does his translation matter?
Excellent question. In 1965, Thurman became the first American ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist monk by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He studied with the greatest lamas of the tradition. Then he did something radical. He disrobed. He married. He had children. He became a professor at Columbia University. In other words, he walked the householder path while becoming one of the great scholar translators of our time.
So he walked the walk.
Exactly. And when he translated Vimalakirti in 1976, he didn't just give us accurate Sanskrit to English conversion. He gave us the energy, the wit, the theater. He made this ancient text feel alive. We're standing on his shoulders, and we need to say that clearly. Bob, if you're listening, Tuk Je Che, thank you. This whole series is possible because of the foundation you built.
Okay, so 10 episodes. What's the arc?
We start with the opening scene, where the Buddha reveals that perception determines reality, not the other way around. Then we watch Vimalakirti engage with everyone from gods to gangsters, showing what it looks like to hold the highest view while living the messiest life. We build towards the climax. Manjushri, the Prince of Wisdom himself, asks Vimalakirti to explain non-duality, and Vimalakirti's response is the most famous silence in Buddhist literature.
He says nothing?
Exactly. Nothing. And that nothing is everything. But we'll get there. First, we need to talk about why we're calling this project Yutak's Razor.
Okay, so who is Utok and what is he cutting?
Yutok Yonten Gonpo, 12th century Tibet, founder of our medical lineage. His name literally means the turquoise roof, which is why we're calling this project Blue Roof Labs, but that's another story. Here's what you need to know. Yutok looked at the medical tradition of his time and saw a crisis. The texts were magnificent, centuries of accumulated wisdom, but they were vast, oceans of commentary, mountains of treatises. He realized that future physicians, people living shorter lives, facing more distractions, would never have time to digest it all.
So what did he do?
He applied the razor. He created the 4 tantras, a complete medical system, distilled into something a busy doctor could actually memorize and use. He didn't dilute the medicine, he concentrated it. He said, if you can't carry the whole library into the field, I'll give you the essence in a form you can actually deploy.
And we're doing that with Buddhist texts?
We're doing that with the delivery mechanism. The Dharma itself, perfect, untouchable. But the way it's been packaged for Western practitioners, there's a gap. Most Dharma content comes in 2 flavors. Instagram memes that say, be present over a sunset photo, or dense Tibetan commentaries that assume you already know what a yidam is and why your channels matter.
The missing middle.
Exactly. We're building the bridge, something you can trust intellectually while your kid is screaming in the back seat, something rigorous enough to withstand scrutiny, but accessible enough to penetrate a distracted mind. That's UTalk's razor. Cut away the inaccessible language, not the rigor.
So who is this for?
The householder, the person who isn't going to do a 3-year retreat, the person who has a job, a family, a mortgage, the person who wants the real teaching but needs it in a form that fits their actual life. In Tibet, we have a specific name for this type of practitioner, the Ngagpa, the white-robed yogi. Picture this. You walk into a village in old Tibet. You see a guy with long hair, wearing a white robe, drinking barley beer, flirting with the innkeeper, while his kids run around. That's a Ngagpa. He's not a monk. He hasn't renounced anything. But when the village gets hit by a plague or a drought or a war, he's the one performing the rituals that actually work. He holds the highest view while living the messiest life.
And Vimalakirti is the original Ngagpa?
He's the patron saint of the kitchen table. He's the proof that you don't have to leave your life to wake up. And that's why we chose this text to start with.
All right, I'm bought in. So let's dive into the text itself. I want to start with the thing that stopped me cold on page 1.
The Buddha field.
Exactly. The text claims that a fully enlightened Buddha creates a pure land, a world with no suffering, no dirt, just absolute perfection. But Sarah, I'm looking out the window right now and I see a world that is objectively on fire. War, poverty, climate collapse, anxiety epidemics. If the Buddha was supposed to purify this world, with all due respect, it looks like he failed.
I love this objection. You're in excellent company. In the opening scene of the Sutra, Shariputra, the smartest monk in the Buddha's entourage, looks around and thinks exactly what you just said. The text is very specific. It says Shariputra had this thought. If the Buddha's mind is pure, why is his Buddha field so uneven? Why do I see rocks, filth, mountains, and suffering?
It's a reasonable question.
It's a diagnostic question, and a god named Brahma, who's listening in on Shariputra's thoughts, calls him out. Brahma says, "Don't say that, Reverend Shariputra. This Buddha field appears to me as splendid as the highest god realms. You're seeing impurity because you're impure."
Okay, but to a modern ear, that sounds dangerously close to gaslighting. It's not the broken system, Alex, it's just your bad attitude. If someone has a real problem, if they're sick, if they can't pay rent, telling them it's all perception feels dismissive.
You're right to push back. If we use this view to ignore suffering, it is cruel. But that's not what the teaching is doing. Let me show you the distinction. Alex, imagine a patient walks into my clinic and screams that a white conch shell is actually yellow. What's the problem?
The patient has jaundice, bile disease.
Exactly. The bile in their blood has colored their vision. Everything looks yellow, not because the world changed, but because their liver is malfunctioning. Now, do I scrub the shell to make it white?
No, that would be insane. You'd treat the liver.
Precisely. Shariputra looks at this world and sees dirty. He thinks the problem is the architecture of reality, but the Buddha is introducing the first law of the Pure Land. Purity is a function of the perceiver, not the geography.
So the Pure Land isn't a place, it's a vision.
It's deeper than that. It's not a mood or a perspective. Those words make it sound subjective, like you can just decide to feel better. The teaching is ontological. It's about the nature of reality itself. The Buddha isn't saying, pretend the world is nice. He's saying the nature of reality is luminous. Your karmic obscurations determine how much of that luminosity you can perceive.
This isn't gaslighting, this is ophthalmology. Okay, but I still need the practical distinction. How does this help someone who's actually struggling?
It separates the pain from the suffering. If you break your leg, the bone is broken. That's real. We treat that. We set the bone, we give you medicine. We don't tell you to perceive it differently. But there's a second layer, what the Buddha called the second arrow. The first arrow is the broken bone. The second arrow is the story you tell yourself. Why me? This is unfair. My life is ruined. I'll never recover. This proves I'm cursed. That second arrow, that's the dirty world projection. It doesn't fix the bone, it just drains your energy.
So, pure view means removing the second arrow, not pretending the first arrow didn't hit?
Exactly. And here's why this matters for the householder. Vimalakirti gets sick. He deals with difficult people. He lives in a corrupt political system. He doesn't float on a cloud above it all, but he holds the view of the jewel while walking through the mud. He treats the relative problem, the sickness, the injustice, the difficulty, while maintaining the ultimate view that all of this is empty and workable. This is the two truths in action. You need both. Lose the relative truth, you become cruel, telling cancer patients to just perceive health. Lose the ultimate truth, you become depressed, drowning in the conviction that the world is irredeemably broken.
Two truths, relative and ultimate. We're going to come back to that, aren't we?
Every episode. It's the spine of the whole path. But let's stay with the opening scene for a moment, because the Buddha does something extraordinary. He doesn't just talk about pure perception, he demonstrates it. The text says, the Buddha touches the ground with his big toe, and instantly the entire assembly sees the world transformed. Thurman's translation says it became as splendid as the array of all the virtues of innumerable Buddha fields, mountains of jewels, infinite space, radiant beings everywhere. Then, and this is key, the Buddha releases his toe, and in an instant, everything returns to its ordinary appearance.
Wait, so he proved it's possible to see that way, but then he took it back.
He showed them that the capacity is always there. The luminosity is always present, but whether you can access it depends on your mind. Think of it like this. The sun is always shining, but if you're in a basement with no windows, you don't see it. The problem isn't the sun. The problem is the walls you've built.
So practice is removing the walls?
Practice is recognizing that the walls are empty. They're made of concepts, like I am separate, the world is solid, suffering is permanent. When those concepts dissolve, even for a moment, you see what was always there. Vimalakirti lives in that recognition. That's why his house is a pure land, even though it's in the middle of a busy, chaotic city.
Okay, so let's bring this home. What's the homework? What does someone listening to this do tomorrow morning?
One practice. Very simple. Catch yourself rendering. When you see something ugly, an annoying email, a rude driver, a stressful headline, pause for just 1 second. Ask yourself, is this the object or is this the jaundice in my own eye? You're not trying to fix your perception. You're just noticing that there is a lens, that you're not seeing reality directly. You're seeing it through a filter of preference and aversion.
And if I notice the filter?
Then the filter starts to loosen, not because you're trying to be positive, but because you're seeing that the dirtiness isn't in the world, it's in the gap between what is and what you wanted.
That's going to take practice.
That's why we have 10 episodes, and that's why next time we're meeting the man himself.
So what's next?
Next episode, we're walking into Vimalakirti's sick room, and here's what you need to know. The Buddha sends his top 10 disciples, Shariputra, Madhgayaya, the whole crew, to check on him. These are the superstars, the senior monks with magical powers and perfect discipline. And one by one, they all refuse. They say, "Please, Lord, don't make me go. That guy destroyed me last time." We're going to hear their stories. We're going to find out why the holiest people alive are terrified of a sick man in bed. And we're going to start to see what real realization looks like. Not the kind that requires a quiet cave, but the kind that holds steady in a marketplace.
I'm ready.
Good, because Vimalakirti doesn't wait for you to be ready. He meets you exactly where you are, and then he shatters the box you're standing in. See you next time.
Tukche Sarah.
Tashi Delay.